Trade talks are intensifying as an NHL insider reveals a shocking trade update on the St. Louis Blues as Doug Armstrong continues to look at adding top six talent to this Blues team going into next season. We're going to break down all these reports coming from an NHL insider, the exact player that fits perfectly in this Blues lineup, and so much more later on this episode. Before we get into that, Blues fans, if you're part of the 75% watchings and you haven't hit that subscribe button yet, we're trying to reach our goal of 4,000 subscribers. Make sure to go down and hit that free subscribe button. It helps us out a ton. And in return, we'll give you updates from all around the Blues, from prospects, game recaps, trades, reports, anything you can think of, you can find right here on Blues Digest. So make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any of the content. But with that, let's just hop into it. And before we get into these trade reports, a recent article dropped by Dom ranking all the most improved and declined teams in the NHL, and this was a tiny bit surprise in my opinion, where they have the Blues ranked at a -1 ranking or net rating and 20th on this list. Now, the biggest thing is we know they lost some key players. They lost a 19 goal scorer in Zach. You move out Faska, Nick Leddy going to the Sharks, Ryan Suter going to a new team, but overall, I think they did improve in a lot of spots, and I don't know if you feel any different, Darius.
I think they improved and they got younger, which is something that's being overlooked in all of this. So, for them to be ranked this low, I guess, on the list is a little surprising to me, because you get one of the better prospects in Logan Mailloux across the league in terms of, young offensive defensemen. Obviously, Bolduc giving him up in that trade, that's tough. It looked like he was going to be a very good player, still very young. Everyone tends to forget how young he still is, and had potential to be a top six player. But look at the Blues top six. You got Snuggerud in there now. Like, they made some really good moves. They shored up their center depth to a point that if there is an injury, you're not even looking bad still. You're in a really, really good spot. So a little bit puzzled by how far down the rankings they were. You also moved off of Nick Leddy, who was making quite a bit of money, was getting older. Now you have an influx of, younger players like a Tyler Tucker, who's going to be able to hopefully flourish in that role, because the coach, like we covered before, Jim Montgomery's a big fan of Tucker. I'm a big fan of Tucker. I believe in him. I think that he can step into that role pretty seamlessly. I don't know about an everyday NHLer in terms of like playing all 82 games. We'll see. Maybe he will this year. I don't know if they're done yet in terms of making moves, which we'll get to, but this one is a little weird to me. I think there's some, continuing disrespect to the St. Louis Blues league-wide right now.
But Blues fans, if you want to read through this full article, we will have it down below. He does go briefly on some of their acquisitions in Suter, Bukestad, which I do think are severely underrated, as Bukestad was a 20-goal scorer, and Pugh Suter scoring 25 goals last season, but that will all be down below. But with that gets straight into the fact the St. Louis Blues are continually looking to add more top six talent. Now we know Doug Armstrong is putting the go fishing sign onto the wall. He said the teams are actively just not being more active around the NHL, and this leads straight into a report today. Also, shout out to Darius for making that. That is awesome. But going straight into, we've seen Frank Siravelli on Bleacher Report, still in the market, still in the mix for top six forwards. You can see a list of teams, but the Blues are also mentioned. Now, going into the quote, we've seen Doug Armstrong going in to say to hang the go fishing sign on the door. We'll talk to teams and get prepared for August. Now, this is the team that wants to continue getting better. We know every team in the NHL feels like that at this point. There's teams looking for the second line center, and the Blues are still looking for that. But there is one name in particular, one team the Blues can call, and I think it makes the most sense, and that's the Pittsburgh Penguins. We know right now, Brian Rust, Rickard Rakell are two names that are actively being shopped. The Penguins are the only team that seems to be shopping. This entire article will be down below too, if you want to read the latest on two of them and how close they're being traded. But there is one name in particular, and that is Rickard Rakell, that fits this team perfectly. Now, we know Rakell had a career year last year playing with Crosby, 70 points. He's a multi-20 goal scorer, putting up very good numbers through his career with the Anaheim Ducks and the Pittsburgh Penguins. Darius, what is your thoughts on this Penguins team selling, and how does Rakell fit within this Blues lineup?
Well, it does make some sense for the reasons that you brought up. The Pittsburgh Penguins are the only sellers in the entire league, which is almost unprecedented, or hasn't happened in like 30 years at this point, where every other team is trying to actively get better at this point in time. Like, I don't even know if there's so many teams trying to tank heading into next year, although there will be, they will emerge. But the Pittsburgh Penguins are actively trying to sell. And Rakell, like you brought up, had a career year last year and first cap hit at $5 million. And the fact that he has term left on it, the fact that he's only 32, he could really help a team. I mean, listen, you're adding 70 points possibly to your lineup. And he did that on a bad team. And yes, at times he was playing with Sidney Crosby and also on the power play. All of these things were true, but he spent a lot of time with Evgeny Malkin on the second line as well. Malkin was dealing with some injuries and whatnot. So Raquel did put together a really good season, on his own as well, right? This is not just the subject of, or by way of Sidney Crosby or anything like that. Yes, of course, playing with Sidney Crosby is going to help you. You're going to produce some points, but, he had a career year at 32 on a bad team. I think that's very telling. So for the St. Louis Blues side of things, $5 million is very affordable. They freed up some cap space with some of the moves that they've made. And of course, we can't forget that they did some of these moves because you don't want to go into overage before the season. You can only go 10% over the cap during the offseason. And they have the LTIR kicking in with Torrey Krug when the season starts, right? So when that does happen, you may be actually able to afford a guy like Raquel at that cap hit. So I think that's very interesting. Even if you have to make more of a minuscule move, if you want to make this work, you can absolutely do that. But the other thing is that you have to consider with the Pittsburgh Penguins, yes, they want to sell these players, but they view them as assets. They're not trying to cap dump or anything like that. So you're going to have to give up something pretty good and worthwhile for the Pittsburgh Penguins, because they feel like with Brian Rust, with Rickard Rakell, with even Erik Karlsson, which I'm not linking him to the Blues at all, but I'm just saying with all three of those, they view them as assets. So they're going to want something pretty nice in return. And I'm not saying you're going to have to give up your best prospect if you're the Blues or anything like that, but you're going to have to give up a pretty significant package for a guy who just had a career year making $5 million. And I mean, look around the league right now, what people are making around the league. $5 million for 70 points is great value, especially because he's locked up beyond this season coming up. So could be an interesting move there for the Blues to kind of shore up more of the top six, and obviously the top nine in by way of that as well.
Because I think the big thing is with the cap rising so much year after year, it's going up 4.5, 5, 6 million each single season. This is the perfect way of getting in on a $5 million contract, which is going to get smaller and smaller against the cap when you're going farther into the future. So by the final year, yes, you're going to have a 36-year-old Rickard Rakell, but this contract's going to look a lot smaller than it currently does going into next year. But the big thing with Rakell, you can add a 60-point getter on this team. You can add someone that scored 20 goals multiple times. He isn't the best on the faceoffs, but early career with the Anaheim Ducks, he was kind of successful. So if you want someone that could slide in to that position maybe down the road, or if you need to, if an injury does occur, you can fit him into that center. He's not going to take over a second line center position, but if you need to fill a void on center at a certain point, yes, you can do this. The cost is going to be a lot. This could be something like Dvorsky. We don't know what Kyle Dubas and the Pittsburgh Penguins are asking for, but after covering so many of the Blues prospects for you guys, you can slowly see how many great prospects are in this system. So Doug Armstrong does have a cupboard of prospects where if he wants to move one or two out, plus a draft pick to acquire a player, there isn't going to just kind of extinguish their full prospect pool. They still have so many options. What's your guys' thoughts on Rakell? Do you think Rakell or Rust fits in? If you wanted to cover Rust too, we can do a full video on that as well. While you're down there, leave a like, subscribe, share this with your friends, leave a comment on anything you wanted to cover. We've seen so many prospects down there. We're going to get to all of them because we love covering the Blues and covering it for you guys, so you're not going to want to miss that. But I've been your host, Mark, with my co-host, Darius. Thank you so much, Blues fans, and take care.